Hello and good evening. My name is Alphonso McGriff III, and this is Alphonso Speaks. This is the platform I use to share information about conscious conversation or the conscious conversation experience. The conscious conversation experience is a collaboration and movement that chooses love and enlightenment. We seek resolution at all times. We don't like to, the objective is to avoid conflict and confrontation, seek resolution, and become enlightened. Resolution, of course, is the successful solving of a problem. If we have any challenges with one another, the goal is to resolve, to resolve, to resolve. I am here to help myself and people around the world transform conflict into conscious conversation that leads to understanding, resolution, and enlightenment. One would ask, what is a conscious conversation? A conscious conversation is a verbal interaction where we speak with the desire to understand. We ask questions and share information. We take responsibility for our thoughts, words, and actions and control our prejudices and emotions, which, if left unchecked, will disrupt the goal of having a conscious conversation. The strength of a conscious conversation is its ability to inspire rather than manipulate. Ultimately, the conscious conversation experience is a pathway to understanding, resolution, and enlightenment. I also share this warning with people who are interested in having a conscious conversation and becoming more comfortable. Once, like for me, once I began to become more comfortable with myself and have a better understanding of life and my interaction with other human beings, it's amazing how sometimes people are intimidated by that. And a lot of times it's insecure people. So I always share this conscious conversation approach with a warning, and that is you will find that people around you begin to change. They may accuse you of changing, and that would be accurate because the more you get comfortable with yourself, the more you get to know yourself, the less you care about what other people feel about how you're moving because you know you're moving in your own best interest. So when people sense that how they feel about you and how you move, when people sense that you don't you don't care, you're not bothered by it, they in turn begin to move against you. And that is one of the realistic sacrifices that we make when we put ourselves in a situation where we'd like to continue growing and evolving, and we find ourselves in the midst of those who have no interest in growing and evolving. So we have to be aware that personal growth, with personal growth, sometimes comes sacrifices where you might have to, uh, you might have to lose some friends and friends and family. It's just the absolute truth, and a lot of times it's not necessarily even friends. It's just the idea that people around you who are insecure will feel uncomfortable in your presence. So that is something that we have to always be aware of. And so I always make that known when I'm talking about the conscious conversation experience and how it affects our personal growth. One of the messages tonight that I'd like to share is if I am controlled by fear, shame, blame, or guilt, then I am being manipulated. We cannot grow and learn from a person who is trying to manipulate us with sheer fear, shame, blame, or guilt. And I learned that a while back. Um, and if we allow ourselves to be controlled by fear, shame, blame, and guilt, we guarantee ourselves a miserable life. It's not. Um, it's not complicated. It's not difficult to understand. When we allow fear, shame, blame, and guilt to control us, we guarantee that our lives are going to be miserable because we're not the ones in the driver's seat of our own life. So that's very important to understand. The other thing I would like to put on the table, and I talked about it already, but I'm going to talk about it again because it came up today and I think it's important to know. I want to talk about self-respect. We're going to get to personal attacks. But before we get to personal attacks, I want to talk about self-respect. And say that I want to say that many times we claim to have self-respect. However, we don't understand that when we allow people to control how we feel, we don't have self-respect. Because when we have self-respect, we don't hand our health over to somebody else to do with it what they choose. And our health includes our breathing rate, our heart rate, our blood pressure, and all of these things that are important to our ability to live. So, self respect is important, but it's important that we exercise it. So, I was walking down the street today, and a gentleman came up to me and he said, he just stopped me in the middle of walking. And I said, hello. He said, hello. We shook hands. And he just started sharing with me how someone came up to him and said something that he didn't like. And he was upset and he was trying to keep his cool. And he did everything to keep from punching that person in the mouth. And he said he eventually walked away without having to punch the person in the mouth, but he really, really wanted to punch that person in the mouth. And I said to him, well, it's good that you maintained your self-respect. And he was like, oh, yeah, I have self-respect. And I said, well, what I mean is you maintained your self-respect to a certain degree. You didn't punch him in the mouth, but you did get upset. And I'm in learning about life and trying to understand this life thing. I hang around the roots of it all. I don't hang around out there in the leaves where the leaves blow any kind of way and the skinny branches. I hang around in the roots. So when I talk about self-respect, I'm talking about the root and very foundation of self-respect, which means that I am the leader of me. And I don't hand that leadership over to anybody. I'm the leader of me at all times, or as much as possible. And soon as I am not the leader of me, then I am compromising my self-respect because I'm handing the leadership of me over to somebody else. It's as simple as that. And so you can't claim I have self-respect and then hand the leader of you over to somebody else. That those two things can't exist in the same place. And again, call it what you want. I call it a lack of self-respect when we allow somebody to determine how we feel from one minute to the next. And that is how I am able to maintain my self-respect. because I don't want to compromise it. Not only that, but I have a foundation to work from in having a desire to maintain my self-respect. And that foundation that I work from is I am the leader of me. And I can't hand that over to anyone else and have self-respect at the same time. And we're doing it every day, all day. You know, there are videos that are constantly coming across the timeline. It doesn't matter what the social media outlet is. Oh, especially on X. Uh, X. If you just want to see conflict and violence, um, there's plenty over on X. But on Facebook, also just constant conflict and violence and all kind of craziness. So, and I say a lot of us don't understand what self-respect is. And so we give it away every day. We compromise it every day. I just wanted to put that point on the table. You cannot hand the leadership of you over to somebody else and then say you have self-respect. You can't hand how you feel over to somebody else and then say, well, I can't hand the leadership of me over to anybody else and then claim I have self-respect. I can't hand my feelings over and say, well, you made me feel this way, and then claim I have self-respect. Those things just don't work. So I I wanted to put that out here. And now I want to talk about what I came to talk about tonight, which was we never intentionally make discouraging remarks, nor do we get engaged in personal attacks. We never intentionally make discouraging remarks, nor do we engage in personal attacks when we're involved in the conscious conversation experience. When negative emotions take over and understanding is no longer desired, this can lead to negative comments and actions. This behavior is not accepted during a conscious conversation or during the conscious conversation experience. We respectfully question an idea, concept, or philosophy. We avoid becoming cynical listeners who digress to sarcasm and hurl insults simply because the speaker shares a different perspective. This behavior prevents a conscious conversation. When people feel attacked, they immediately become defensive, and the conversation becomes a debate to win. And when this happens, understanding what people mean and resolving challenges is impossible. If we speak and feel verbally inadequate during a conversation, rather than become defensive, emotional, and reactionary, we must listen. This will improve our knowledge of the subject and further develop our ability to support our ideas and verbally and intellectually. So sometimes many of us who we get into a conversation or a debate and we're not as good at defending our point as the other person. So rather than stepping back and recognizing we're in a little bit above our heads, we start hurling insults. And the next thing you know, we're talking about each other's shoes and mothers, and physical attributes and things like that. And it digresses into a rank session. So rather than allowing that to happen, if we recognize that we are inadequate or we're not as good at making our point as maybe the other person is, sometimes we might want to fall back and sit back and listen and maybe learn something so that we can become better at sharing our perspective and defending our perspective and helping people understand our perspective. Because in a conscious conversation, the goal is not to win or any of it. The goal is understanding at all times. So again, when we are engaged in the conscious conversation experience, we don't get involved in personal attacks. Because when we engage in personal attacks, we're just acknowledging that we don't know how to defend the point that we're making or help people understand the point that we're making. It's not necessary. And we don't do it during the conscious conversation experience. Now, I just wanted to come on and share that tonight. I didn't want to be long. I just want to remind you that self-respect is very important when it comes to how we interact with other people, how we feel about what we're doing, and being in charge of ourselves, not giving leadership over me to someone else. And that is a form of self-respect. When I do not hand leadership of me could be how I feel, could be how I behave, could be anything that's not good for me. And then I hand leadership of me over to someone else, to the extent that I find myself in a worse situation than I started out because I had an emotional reaction. Oh, some people say I blacked out. In the book, I talk about um, people, when they say they black out, a lot of times, blacking out really means that an incident came up that I always thought about and said, if this ever happened to me, this is what I would do. And so we don't know. We are conditioning ourselves and our bodies and our minds to go into instant automatic systematic remote control. So for instance, if I say over and over again, I've said it to my friends in high school, college, over the years, I've said, if I ever walked in on my wife with somebody else, I'd do this, 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 and this. We are conditioning our minds to function in that capacity. So when that incident comes up, what we call blacking out is our mind and body taking over. No different than a person who's preparing for a skating performance or a gymnastics performance, or guys preparing for a football or basketball game. You go through everything mentally. So by the time you're physically engaged, your body takes over and you don't have to think about what you're going to do next. That happens in a negative way too. We program ourselves to instantly respond. And then we tell somebody, I don't know what happened, I blacked out. Well, what happened is your body and your mind took over and handled its business based on how you trained and conditioned it to. So when we give someone else leadership over us, we make ourselves susceptible to those kind of behaviors. So I'm just trying to help us be aware of ourselves to the extent we don't put ourselves in really bad situations. So I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. You could have been doing anything right now, or even when you watch the video afterwards. In this very moment, you chose to give me some time in your life, and I don't take it for granted. I love you all, and I always will, and I will never give up on our people, ever. The late, great Isaac Hayes once said, whatever you do, you've got to do your thing. And that's just the truth. And everything we do is our thing. We cannot blame it on anybody else. We can't somebody made me do it and all of this stuff. We're doing our thing. And everybody else is doing their thing. And that's the absolute truth. So you all have a wonderful evening, and it's been nice talking to you. And I am officially out of here. Peace.